The sun broke through the kitchen window like an old friend, casting soft beams of gold over the countertops. The quiet hum of life swirled around me as I poured my coffee, savoring the rich aroma that filled the room. It was a Tuesday morning, the kind where time seemed to pause, as though the universe itself was holding its breath. The calmness of the day, though welcome, felt almost too still, as if the world was waiting for something to stir it into motion. I say, immersed in the familiar routine, an old friend in itself. My house, small but full of warmth, my garden, thriving under my care, and my life, simple and peaceful, a rhythm I had grown accustomed to. Days flowed one into the other, each one predictably following the last. Most mornings, I found solace in reading, tending to my plants, and exchanging pleasantries with the neighbors when they crossed my path. Yet, as I sank into the soft cushions of my couch, book in hand, this particular morning was about to prove that routine, while comforting, is not immune to change. A knock at the door. The sound sliced through the stillness, unexpectedly, like a sharp exhale in a quiet room. My heart skipped a beat, a fleeting flutter of alarm. I wasn't expecting anyone. Who could it be? I opened the door, and there she stood, Karen, my neighbor. A woman whose presence was as familiar as the gentle rhythm of life in our quiet neighborhood. Over the years, we had exchanged smiles, quick hellos, and the kind of casual conversation that happens between people who are content with their quiet lives. Yet today, something was different. Karen, in her early 60s, always exuded a sense of grace and confidence. Her silver hair was neatly styled, her smile wide and warm, and there was a quiet authority in the way she carried herself. But now, there was something in her eyes, something hidden beneath the surface of her usual poise. She looked flustered, almost unsure of herself, her cheeks flushed, her gaze wandering for a moment before meeting mine. "Hi, I hope I'm not disturbing you," she stammered, her voice betraying a nervousness I had never heard before. "I need your help with something, and I understand if it's a lot to ask, but could I talk to you for a minute? It's kind of personal." Her words struck me like a whisper of wind that stirs the calm waters of a pond. This wasn't like Karen. She was always in control, steady, a woman who could be counted on for advice or a helping hand. To hear her voice quiver with uncertainty made my heart stir with concern. "Of course, come in," I said, stepping aside, my curiosity piqued. "What's going on?" She hesitated, her hands wringing in front of her as she gathered her thoughts, clearly weighing the enormity of what she was about to share. "It's not easy for me to ask this," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I find myself in a bit of a situation, and I could really use your help." I nodded, waiting. I had known Karen long enough to recognize when something was serious. She wasn't the type to ask for help, and yet here she was, vulnerable. Something in her life, tipping the balance she had so carefully maintained. "I need someone to watch over something for me," she continued, her eyes flickering nervously, almost as if she were afraid to speak the words aloud. "Something very important. I can't go into details right now, but I trust you. That's why I'm coming to you." My heart raced, the gravity of her words settling over me like a heavy blanket. What could she possibly be involved in that was so crucial, so secretive? "What is it, Karen? You can trust me. Whatever it is, we'll figure it out." Her gaze fell to the floor, and I could see the weight of her words, of whatever burden she was carrying. When she finally spoke, her voice cracked, raw with emotion. "I'm scared," she confessed, her shoulders trembling. "I don't know who else to turn to." In that moment, the room seemed to shrink, the air thick with tension. The woman who had always been so composed, so sure of herself, was now undone, standing before me with the kind of vulnerability I had never seen before. The bond between us, built over years of quiet exchanges, suddenly felt like the strongest thread in a fragile tapestry. "You can tell me anything," I said gently, my voice steady despite the storm raging in my chest. "You don't have to be afraid." She took a deep breath, locking her eyes with mine. The weight of the moment hung in the air as she made her decision, her voice steadying with the urgency of what she had to say. I need you to keep something safe for me, she whispered, her hands shaking slightly as she reached into her purse, something that could change everything. And I need you to promise you won't ask questions. Not yet. I nodded without hesitation, though 1,000 questions swirled in my mind. What was she asking of me? What could possibly be so significant, so dangerous, that it required such secrecy? I promise, I said, my voice firm, despite the fear curling in my gut. Whatever it is, I'll help you. She handed me a small, unmarked box. It was light, but in my hands, it felt far heavier than its size. She looked at me one last time, her eyes a mixture of relief and fear. You can't open it, she said, her voice barely audible. Not until I say, please, just keep it safe. I nodded again, the weight of my promise settling deep within me. I'll keep it safe. As she turned to leave, the world outside seemed unchanged, but inside me, a shift had occurred. I didn't know what the future held, but in that moment, I understood something fundamental. Sometimes, the most ordinary moments hold the heaviest burdens, and in those moments, we are called upon to act with courage, even when the path ahead is uncertain. Thank you. I'll be back soon. Just keep it locked away. Don't let anyone know you have it. I watched Karen walk away, her figure slowly dissolving into the distance. The door clicked shut behind her, and with it, the familiar silence of my home seemed to expand, swelling in the stillness. It was as if the air itself had thickened, charged with an unseen tension, as if the very walls knew that something had changed, something I didn't fully understand yet. There I stood, holding the small, unmarked box, its weight far heavier than its size. I had no clue what lay inside, what secret it held, or what kind of storm I had just stepped into. All I had were Karen's words, fragile yet commanding, ringing in my ears. Keep it locked away. Don't let anyone know you have it. I stared at the box, my mind in a swirl of questions, but it remained just that, a question. My eyes traced the edges, the simple wooden surface that seemed to mock my inability to resist. Each second that passed felt like an eternity, yet the minutes ticked by. My mind circled back to Karen's fear, her trembling hands, the vulnerability in her eyes when she placed the box into mine. What could it possibly be? What secret could it be holding that had the power to break her composure, to make her this afraid? In that moment, the calmness I had always prided myself on began to erode. I had always thought of myself as someone capable of handling whatever life threw my way. I had lived in the quiet of routine for so long, content with the certainty of my small, predictable world. But now, the very foundation of that certainty had been shaken. What had Karen gotten herself into, and why had she entrusted me with this secret? The hours passed, and I remained in the same spot, the box untouched, still sitting on the kitchen table, its mere presence heavy in the room. I kept telling myself I wouldn't open it, not yet. There was a reason she had asked me to keep it locked away, to not ask questions. But despite my resolve, a deep unease gnawed at me, a nagging feeling that whatever was inside that box was far more important and far more dangerous than I could fathom. I tried to distract myself. I made dinner. I read a bit. I even walked around the yard to shake off the restlessness that had taken root in my chest. But the box remained, its shadow following me in every room, pulling me back to it, whispering unanswered questions into the silence. The next day, as I sat on the porch, trying to enjoy the cool breeze, I saw Karen again. She was walking briskly down the street, her steps quick and purposeful. But there was something unmistakably different about her. She wasn't the confident, self-assured woman I had known. Instead, she looked like someone who was carrying a burden so great, it was bending her under its weight. I debated whether I should approach her. The urge to reach out, to ask if she was okay, was strong. But I hesitated, unsure if I could handle the answer. Before I could decide, she spotted me, her eyes scanning the street nervously before she waved me over. "Hey, Karen, everything okay?" I called out, my voice trying to stay light, even though the tightness in my chest betrayed my concern. I couldn't help but notice the worry lines etched deeply on her forehead. Lines that had never been there before. She stopped in front of my porch, her gaze darting from side to side, as if making sure no one was watching before she spoke. "I'm sorry for coming over so early," she said, her voice shaky, filled with an urgency I hadn't heard before. I need to talk to you. Can I come in?" I stepped aside, opening the door wider for her to enter, but she didn't sit down this time. Instead, she paced back and forth in front of the door, her hands twisting together nervously. There was something new in her eyes, a look that I couldn't quite place. Fear? Regret? A combination of both? "I didn't mean to drag you into this," she began, her voice barely a whisper, as if the words themselves were too heavy to bear. "But it's too late now, isn't it?" I closed the door behind her, and we were alone, the weight of her words settling like a shadow between us. "You don't have to explain anything yet," I reassured her, stepping forward. "I told you I'm here for you. Whatever it is, I'll help." She looked up at me, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. "I don't know how to make this right," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I thought I could handle it alone, but now, I'm scared. I don't know who to trust." Her words struck me like a thunderclap, and I felt the world shift beneath my feet. What could have happened to change everything so suddenly? What had she been keeping from me? "Karen, you can trust me," I said, my voice firm with an empathy that I didn't even know I was capable of. "But you need to tell me what's going on. Whatever it is, you don't have to carry it alone." Her eyes locked onto mine, and for a moment, it seemed as if she were weighing the decision in her mind. The silence stretched between us, and I could almost feel her fighting with the truth she had yet to reveal. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's my son, Ease. He's gotten involved with some dangerous people." The words hit me like a cold wave, crashing over me with the force of a truth I wasn't ready to hear. "I didn't want to believe it at first," she continued, her voice trembling. "He's always been such a good kid. But now I don't know what to do." Her voice faltered, breaking under the weight of the words she had just spoken. I could feel the agony in her, the burden of a mother's helplessness, and in that moment, everything changed. The box on the table, the secret it contained, it all made sense now. Karen wasn't just carrying a burden of her own. She was carrying the weight of her son's choices that had led him into darkness. And somehow, I had become part of this story. This wasn't just about a mysterious box anymore. It was about family trust and a mother's worst fear, the thought that her child could be in danger. "Karen, I had no idea," I said softly, my heart aching for her. "What happened?" She wiped a tear from her cheek, looking more vulnerable than I'd ever seen her. "He came to me a week ago asking for money. He's been borrowing from some people I've never heard of, and now I think they're threatening him. I don't know what to do. I thought if I could keep it quiet, keep him safe without getting involved, it would blow over, but now it's out of control." She paused, taking a shaky breath. "The box, it's his. He left it with me, saying that it was important, and now they know he came to me. I'm scared, and I don't know what's going to happen next. They'll come for me, won't they?" Her voice was filled with a mix of fear and guilt, and it hit me harder than I expected. Here was this woman, someone who had always seemed so strong, now broken and afraid, doing everything she could to protect her son, Karen. "We'll figure this out. I'll help you," I said, reaching out to place a hand on her shoulder. "You're not alone in this." She looked at me, her eyes filled with gratitude, but also a hint of disbelief, as if she couldn't fully comprehend the kindness I was offering. "I don't know what to say," she whispered, her voice full of emotion. "I never thought I'd be in a situation like this. I don't know how to fix it. You don't have to have all the answers right now," I said, offering a reassuring smile, one step at a time. There was a long pause as Karen gathered herself. Then, almost as an afterthought, she spoke again. "Have you opened the box?" she asked, her voice a little more steady. Now I shook my head. "No, I've kept my promise. I haven't touched it." She sighed with relief, then nodded slowly, or gazed, drifting toward the table where the box sat. "Good. It's safer that way for now. Anyway," she seemed to be struggling with something. But before I could ask, she turned to leave. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I don't know what I would do without you." And just like that, she was gone. I stood there watching her retreating figure, 1,000 thoughts racing through my mind. I had been drawn into something much bigger than I had anticipated, and I didn't know if I was ready for what lay ahead. But one thing was certain. I couldn't back out. Now, the days that followed were a blur of emotions and constant uncertainty. Karen's words echoed in my mind, each time a little louder than the last. Her son was involved with dangerous people, people I couldn't begin to imagine. And that mysterious box, the one she had entrusted to me, sat there on the kitchen table, its islands deepening. I found myself staring at it often, wondering what could possibly be inside that could tie her son to these people. What kind of trouble had he gotten into, and why did Karen feel the need to keep it from me, to keep everything hidden? I knew she was afraid, but I also knew that there were pieces of the puzzle she hadn't shared. The weight of the box seems to grow heavier with each passing hour. I tried to keep busy with my daily routines, but I couldn't shake the feeling that my life was being pulled in a direction I wasn't prepared for. Every time I caught sight of the box, I felt a chill run down my spine. I decided to take a walk that evening, hoping the fresh air would clear my mind. As I strolled through the neighborhood, I couldn't help but notice the familiar faces of my neighbors. People who, just like me, were going about their daily lives without a clue as to the storm brewing in our midst. My thoughts wandered back to Karen. What had she meant when she said, "They'll come for me"? Were these people capable of something terrible? I had never imagined my quiet neighborhood could harbor such danger. The street lights flickered as I walked, casting long shadows across the sidewalk. The cool breeze ruffled the leaves of the trees, and the evening air felt strangely comforting in contrast to the turmoil that was brewing in my heart. When I returned home, I stood at the door for a moment, hesitating. The box still waited for me inside. I didn't know if I was ready to open it, but something deep inside me told me it was time. Time to confront whatever lay hidden. I closed the door behind me and walked toward the kitchen, my heart pounding in my chest. I didn't want to invade Karen's trust, but I also knew that I couldn't stay in the dark forever. I had to understand what was going on and what was inside the box. I reached for the lid and hesitated for just a moment before lifting it. The contents inside were wrapped in plain brown paper, and as I carefully unwrapped it, my breath caught in my throat. Inside there was a stack of documents, files, photographs, and what appeared to be legal papers. My hands trembled as I carefully examined them. It was a mix of official-looking papers and photos that seemed far too personal, and in the center of the pile was a small unmarked envelope. I opened it carefully, my fingers brushing against the cool paper. Inside was a single photograph, one I recognized all too well. It was a photo of Karen, her son, and a man I didn't know. The man in the photo looked familiar, but I couldn't place him at first. His face was serious, but the expression on Karen's face made it clear that whatever connection they had, it wasn't a simple one. The more I looked at the photo, the more it unsettled me. There was something about the man's eyes, something that struck me as both dangerous and calculating. And then a cold realization crept up on me. That man in the photo, he was one of the neighbors. I quickly flipped through the rest of the papers. They were filled with names, numbers, and what appeared to be coded messages. My head swam as I tried to make sense of it all. It was clear that Karen's son had gotten tangled up in something much bigger than he could handle, and I feared that the people involved might not hesitate to do whatever it took to protect their interests. The weight of it all hit me like a ton of bricks. Karen had known this, but she hadn't wanted to drag me into it. She hadn't wanted to burden me with the truth, but now the truth was here, and there was no turning back. I spent the rest of the evening poring over the documents, trying to decipher them, but it was clear that I wasn't getting anywhere. The numbers, the names, they all seemed connected, but I couldn't figure out how. It was like a puzzle with too many missing pieces, and I was stuck in the middle, unable to see the full picture the next morning. I couldn't shake the feeling of dread that hung over me. I knew I had to speak to Karen again. She had to know what I had found, and together we needed to figure out how to deal with this. But when I went to her house, she wasn't there. Her car was parked in the driveway, but the house was silent. I knocked, but no one answered. My heart began to race as I wondered where she could be. Had she known something I didn't? Was she in danger? I walked around the back of the house calling her name, but there was no sign of her. Panic began to rise in my chest as I felt the weight of the situation pressing down on me. Something was wrong, and I had no idea how to fix it. I called her phone, but it went straight to voicemail. I tried again and again, but there was still no answer. My thoughts spiraled as I wondered if I was too late. Then, just as I was about to give up and leave, I saw something strange, a figure in the distance walking down the street toward me. It was Karen, but something was different about her. Her steps were slow, almost reluctant, as though she was carrying a burden far too heavy to bear. I rushed toward her, relief flooding over me, but as I got closer, I could see the fear in her eyes. Something had happened, something that had changed her in a way I couldn't yet understand. "Karen," I called, but she didn't respond. When she finally looked up at me, I could see it in her face. This was no longer just a mother trying to protect her son. This was a woman who had reached the end of her rope. "Karen, what's going on?" I asked, gently reaching out to her. She stared at me for a long moment, as if trying to decide how much to say. Then she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "They found me." Karen's words hit me like a thunderclap. "They found me." I felt the world around me tilt, as though the ground beneath my feet had shifted. The weight of her statement was immense, and my heart raced with fear. I took a step forward, reaching out for her. "Karen, what do you mean? Who has found you?" I needed to know, needed to understand what had led to this moment, but the answers weren't coming easily. She took a deep breath, her eyes darting around, as though she expected someone to appear out of the shadows. She was on edge, her posture stiff and uneasy. She clutched her purse tightly, and for a brief moment, I could see the faintest trace of something hidden inside. Something that looked like a piece of paper. "I didn't want to bring you into this," she started, her voice shaky. "But it's too late now. They know everything." She paused, glancing at the street around us, as though checking for anyone who might be listening. I followed her gaze, my senses heightened. "Who are they, Karen? And what do they know?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm, even though panic was clawing at my insides. Karen's face softened for a moment, and she gave a short, almost bitter laugh. "It's all connected. You see the box, my son, those people. Everyone has their secrets, and some secrets are more dangerous than others. They've been watching us for months, maybe longer. My son. He was a fool to get involved, but he was desperate, and now I'm paying the price." My mind raced as I pieced her words together. Karen's son had gotten tangled up in something far bigger than I had imagined. I had thought it was just a small-time deal, something that could be swept under the rug, but now I was realizing the extent of the danger they were all in. "Are you in danger?" I asked quietly, not sure I wanted to hear the answer. She nodded, her face pale. "They've been threatening me, sending messages, showing up at the house when I'm not looking. They've been trying to get me to talk, but I haven't said a word. I won't." Her voice wavered, but there was an unmistakable strength in it too. "I'd promised myself I wouldn't let anyone hurt my son, but now I don't know how much longer I can protect him or myself." The enormity of what she was facing hit me full force. Karen wasn't just trying to keep a secret, she was fighting for her life, and she wasn't alone in this fight. Her son was somewhere in the middle of it too, struggling to get out to make things right. But how could anyone escape from something so dangerous, so entangled in shadows? "Karen," I said gently, "you need to tell me everything. I can't help if you don't tell me the truth." She hesitated, her fingers gripping the strap of her purse. Then, after a long, agonizing silence, she spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. "My son got involved with them about a year ago," she said, her eyes downcast, as if ashamed of the truth. "He was in trouble, financial trouble, and they promised to help him. They gave him money, make him feel like he could finally breathe again. But it wasn't just money. They had strings attached, and soon those strings turned into chains. He couldn't get out. And the things he did, I don't even know if he ever really understood what they were asking of him. He thought it was harmless at first, but it's not. She looked up at me, her eyes filled with regret. I had to hide it from you. I had to hide it from everyone. I couldn't let anyone know how deep he was in. But now I'm afraid. Afraid from both of us. I stood there trying to process everything she had just said. It wasn't just money or a simple mistake anymore. This was something much darker, and Karen was at the center of it. I thought of the box, the photographs, the coded messages. It was all connected, and I was part of it. Now, whether I liked it or not. Before I could say anything else, we heard a sound, a car pulling up slowly behind us. We both turned, and my stomach dropped. When I saw who it was, a black sedan, its windows tinted slowly, creeping down the street toward us. My pulse quickened, and I could see Karen's face go pale again. She stiffened her body, go rigid, as she looked toward the car. I had no idea what kind of danger we were in, but it was real, and it was here. They found us, Karen whispered again, her voice trembling. I felt the air grow thick with tension. As the car stopped just a few feet away from us, the engine died, and for a long, agonizing moment, nothing happened. The world seemed to hold its breath waiting, and then the door opened. A man stepped out, tall with dark sunglasses despite the fading light of the evening. He was dressed in a black suit, his movements calculated and precise. My gut twisted with unease. Karen took a step back, her eyes wide with fear. I'd wanted to reach out to her to pull her away, but I knew it was too late. The man walked towards us slowly, his gaze fixed on Karen. There was a coldness in his eyes that sent a shiver down my spine. "You have something that belongs to us," he said, his voice smooth but laced with a deadly calm. I could see the recognition flash across Karen's face, and in that moment, I knew that this man wasn't just a stranger. He was part of the web that had trapped her son, and now he was here to collect. I swallowed hard, trying to keep my voice steady. "What is it you want?" The man's gaze shifted toward me, and for the first time I saw a flicker of something, amusement maybe, or perhaps just curiosity. He didn't answer immediately, his eyes scanning me as if weighing my worth. "What do you think?" he finally said, his lips curving into a cold smile. "Your neighbor has something we need, and it's time she gives it up." Karen looked at me, her eyes wide with fear. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't want you to be part of this, but it was too late for apologies." This is where the story ends, at the precipice of a life-changing moment. The danger Karen feared has arrived, and both she and I are caught in its grip. The box, the secrets, and the lies have all led us here into a confrontation that could change everything. And yet as we stand there facing this man, I can't help but wonder, how will it all end? Will we survive, or will this be the moment that we lose everything? Only time will tell.